Sometimes you meet a new person and you just know that they have a story to tell. Occasionally, you have an opportunity to learn just a little more about them. Well, hey guys, it's Ashley. And on this episode of Meet Our Neighbors, we're going to meet my friend, Lou. Let's go meet him.
So I've known you for a little bit. Is there something about you that if anybody else were to meet you that they might not automatically know?
It's a great question. A few things. The first thing that comes to mind that I probably would have included if I was asked this question earlier in my life is that I've had a fair amount of experience with Child Protective Services.
Okay.
Specifically when I was younger, and typically people don't expect that from me.
You don't usually lead in with, hey guys, so this happened.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that might be number one. Number two, I'm transgender, and I have been pleasantly surprised, and I'm also, it's sort of difficult to explain sometimes because I love the fact that I pass so easily in society. I do not love the fact that trans men usually just get forgotten about or sort of just swept under the rug. And the reason that I say that isn't because I feel necessarily that, trans men, they need more representation. They do, but that's not why I feel strongly about it. I feel strongly about it because of the fact that there are so many trans people out there, and visibility is important to me in the fact that it educates people. And when I reveal to people that I just met, people on the street, anywhere, it's a moment of education that might not have occurred otherwise. And I just legally changed my name, and I got my license updated, I updated my social security, et cetera, and it was a long process. It was a really long process. Anybody that has changed their name, has had to change their sex on their birth certificate will know it's not easy. And for the longest time, I was honestly pretty hesitant about it due to my attachment to educating people.
So what, if I can ask, what name were you born with?
I was born, or my dead name, I guess I should call it, is Louisa, and that's Louisa.
Okay.
And I've been going by Lou for the past, probably 2.5 years now. Though it always has been a nickname of mine, it just has never been a formal thing up until I started transitioning.
So you're Lou?
Right up. Yeah, so I'm Lou. And, well, legally Lewis now, which is cool. Just drop the A right off.
It's very official.
Yeah.
The first thing that I ever noticed about you was this broad smile. This joy that is, I tell everybody, it is palpable. You can't walk into a room and people not notice that you're happy. It just flows through you. Has that always been that way with you?
Thank you, first of all. That means a lot. And interestingly, it's sort of yes and no. Yes, in the way that I have always made an effort to try to make others feel welcome and safe around me for my entire life. I've always been very aware of how other people feel and picking up on the little things. And I honestly want to credit being brought up as a female. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think being brought up female, there's a lot more responsibility that is placed on the individual from a young age in a certain sense of feeling this inherent responsibility to take care of others and to take care of others' feelings.
So the gender expectations, the gender normatives that are placed on me, that were placed on you at birth, that has impacted you now as you are living your life as your true self as a man.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's why I would say yes, to a certain degree. The reason why I would say no is because the happiness that I feel I have now, or that is true and apparent and something that I can feel and name, that wasn't necessarily there before. And within me, like I would present in a certain way, but more on the people-pleasing side of things, where now it's actually true. And I don't have to think about it, and it doesn't feel like an act. There are a few, well, I was going to say a few different reasons for that. There are a plethora of reasons for that. But the number one, I sincerely believe, is transitioning. It completely saved my life and changed, at that, the trajectory of my life, because it wasn't going in the direction that I wanted, or one that was sustainable.
If you would not have transitioned, would you be alive today?
I don't know. It's a scary thing to think about, because I don't know. I don't know.
Was there a point in your life that you looked at your life and you're like, you know what? This is not for me anymore.
So many times. And at a certain point, a couple of certain points, it was all the time. Even more than a couple of certain points. It was from a very young age. I have documented from my own writings, documented evidence of that too, which the times where I have taken a moment to go through them, I almost can't believe it sometimes, because it's almost as if I've like wiped some of that from my memory, but then once I'm reading it right off the page, I'm transported right back. And the earliest documentation I have of having suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation of any form, I believe was about 4th grade. It might have even been earlier. I first got a short haircut when I was in 3rd grade. And I was so excited. And I remember I hadn't even gone to school yet with the haircut, but the night before, after I was just so happy about getting this haircut, the night before I was crying, tantrum city. And my dad didn't know what to do. It's like, well, my daughter at the time just got a haircut that she wanted, that she was begging for, and now she's crying. Why? And at the time, I knew, but I didn't have the language to describe why. And of course, it was because I had already understood from a sociological perspective how this haircut would continue to impact me from then on in social settings. And that, it blows my mind, for one, and it also breaks my heart, too, because there are so many kids that go through the same thing, let alone, of course, adults, everybody. Kids, though, it's a lot harder to get through things, or it can be, when you don't understand what the situation is and when you don't have the resources. At the time, 10-ish years ago, society is still not up to date on what to do in situations like that, and how to treat what could be gender-affirming care. From then on, so I got the haircut in 3rd grade, I really started expressing myself in a different way. Previously, I would wear dresses, and all the girly type things, all the social standards. And I enjoyed them, I liked them. I then switched over to more masculine type clothing, basketball shoes, my basketball shorts, like the whole thing. And I loved that too. Until 5th grade, that is pretty much how I was presenting. And I was passing as a young boy. I remember looking in the mirror back then and feeling that something was not right. I mean everything, but like something. Something specifically, when I would look in the mirror, it was not right. I put so much effort, even at that age, I would wear the tightest sports bras that I could find. I bought Ace bandages at 7-Eleven. I would put Band-Aids. Like, it wasn't a good situation.
Well, puberty would come, I would imagine, around the 5th,
Yeah.
maybe 6th grade mark.
Yeah.
And so then your body's starting to change, and you've been passing, and you can't necessarily pass anymore.
Right.
And I've heard that wearing those tight sports bras or those Ace bandages, that can hurt. There can be not only pain, but skin irritation and lacerations. And
Yeah.
then if you don't share that with someone, you're not getting the care that you need either for your own body.
Right. Precisely. And I felt ashamed. I always knew, for a variety of different reasons, that my life was different from many of my peers that I was around all the time.
You always knew. So do you know at what age, even if you didn't know it might be inside my body doesn't match my outside of body, do you know when those thoughts started coming to you?
Around that time that I had the short haircut, probably peak time, fourth and fifth grade, was when it was really setting in. Fifth grade, too, especially. I do remember, and my dad remembers too, I would tell him, I'm not supposed to be in this body, I'm supposed to be a boy. And at that point too, a lot of people were assuming that it was sexuality based. So for a while, I joke about it. I say I tried to be gay, or tried to be, what people would just be like, you're a lesbian. I would try. And for a while, I even labeled myself that. But it never felt right, and it never worked out in that way. And I was really confused. All the media that I had at the time, which there was some transgender media that I had come across, but it was never female to male. It was always male to female. And so I had a certain idea in my head, and I was also confused about why I still liked guys too. And I couldn't wrap my head around that concept. I didn't have anybody guiding me through that either. I was assuming a lot of things about myself, and everybody else was, of course, assuming a lot of things about me. I keep coming back to the 4th and 5th grade because 5th grade specifically was probably the hardest year of my school experience, due to having trouble going into the bathrooms, the girls' bathrooms, having trouble with going into the locker rooms, being forced to have to go in there. At a certain point, I was quite literally peeing myself walking home from school because I refused to go during the day. I didn't want to do it. After a while, I did get permission to go to the bathroom in the nurse's office, which was helpful. But of course, for a young kid, it's tough for somebody to have to say to you, okay, since you're different from everybody else, you have to go by yourself, do this thing alone, separated from everybody. It was better, but it wasn't great.
It was calling you out in a way too, I would imagine. Your classmates noticed.
Yeah.
And you're going to the special bathroom.
Yeah, exactly. And I even remember one time I got in trouble for taking too long, and I was trying to explain, and I could feel tears coming up. I was trying to explain, well, I had to go up 3 flights of stairs, and it felt really isolating, and just like it's all my fault. It was so bad for me mentally, even physically. I didn't want to go to school. I remember begging both of my parents at the time, can I be homeschooled? Can I please not have to deal with this?
So you are struggling because you are going to the bathroom, 3 flights of stairs, being kind of called out as different, hitting puberty all at the same time. That sounds fun. And then having these thoughts in your mind, this body that's changing, and no real language in which to articulate that.
Yeah.
That must have been incredibly isolating.
Yeah. It really was. Going into the summer after 5th grade, specifically, I can remember doing so much research. How can I grow my hair out the fastest possible way? How can I be a girl, essentially? And it sounds funny when I say that, it kind of is, but it was true. From that point on, I was really studying to be a girl. I remember having this book, and I think it was by the American Girl Company, and and like talking about puberty and how to care for yourself and whatnot. I read that book front to back probably like 100 times, to the point where I was just like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what they want me to do. They meaning society,
Sure.
family, everybody, really. This is what's going to get me through. And though that's not exactly, I wish I could remember the exact thoughts that I was having during that time, but that's what it was. I didn't realize it then because I unfortunately had to learn it the hard way. I put on a character, an act, for the next however many years until I started transitioning. 7, 8 years, something like that. I remember my hair was growing out and I was gradually, trying to wear more feminine clothing. I was slowly morphing into somebody that I thought was me, but it wasn't me. Clothing, I have a few different stances and honestly lenses that I can look at clothing through. Because clothing, to me, it's not everything, but at the time it was, due to the age, probably, kids and also everybody around me putting so much emphasis on what they perceived about me from what I wore. It was really good at first. And at first, meaning for the first few years, it was sort of like I'm riding the high of people finally accepting me.
The people pleaser in you was like,
Yes.
I've done it.
Yeah,
Okay.
precisely, 100%. That felt really good because I had felt so lonely and isolated for so long that something different seemed cool. I was making a lot of friends and people generally were just nicer to me, really. I feel like too that there are many reasons for that. I can look at it through the gender lens. I can look at it through the fact that I was a tall female that had long red hair. The people-pleasing factor was really, I think, that's something to put emphasis on. That all of these things together, it set me up for a lot of distress and abuse. There's a lot of things that go into that too. That is not necessarily due to how I looked or how I came across to people. That wasn't my fault. And that's also something that's taken a long time to realize too, that what has happened was not my fault. Why I feel so strongly about having access to gender-affirming care, for one, in general, for all ages, I really think it would do so much harm. It is already doing so much harm to completely wipe out access to gender-affirming care for younger people. There's so much more under the surface than people expect. People meaning
Society.
yeah. Society, cisgender society, thinks that or has thought that it's better to wait until 18, in which in certain cases, maybe that is true. However, there are things that are not being accounted for. One, I just did not care about myself at all because I wasn't viewing myself as myself. It was like I was watching my life as a movie all the time. All the decisions I made, they were not for me. They were for somebody else. I did not care. I didn't care at all. On the note of abuse and specifically sexual abuse, I will include just manipulation and power differentials in there too in general. There's so much that has happened that I of course wish on one hand that it didn't happen. On the other hand, I have learned a lot from it and I wouldn't have the perspective that I do today, especially as somebody that is perceived as a male in society. So I think for that, it is really valuable. And that's why I want to talk about it, because not many men have the perspective that some trans men do. On the other side of that, though, there's been a lot that I've had to work through. I do think that it could have been prevented if I had access to gender-affirming care when I was younger.
It meaning sexual assault.
In a certain way, yes. What I mean by that, again, I accept that it was not my fault, and it could have been anybody. In the moment though, I can pull from like 10 plus experiences. Like it was a constant thing, because it's not that I let things happen. I get really sad when I hear people talk about it like that, especially with younger people.
Sure.
Because no, it's not that I let it happen, it's that I didn't understand, for one, what was going on. 2, I didn't care about myself. 3, I so badly wanted to fit in with the guys. So much of my life, it has felt like I've had to prove myself in a certain way. Prove myself meaning that I'm just chill, or I'm not like the other girls in one way or another, because, well, I wasn't.
Right.
But my wanting to fit in with the guys was then taken out of context in so many situations. Other people deciding to take it a step further was not my fault.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Me wanting to fit in with the guys, though, not understanding why it wasn't possible in that way, because I wasn't being perceived as a guy ever, even when I thought that I was. I think that's the saddest part. When I look back, there are so many moments when I would be in a group of guys and I'd be like, wow, I made it. I finally made it. Like they're my bros and they're seeing me as a bro. And then next thing I know, it's the same pattern happening again. And it was just over and over and over and over. And then I got labeled as a lot of things, even, promiscuous. That's another thing too that I feel is really important to speak out about, because how unfair it is for women, assigned female at birth individuals in general, to be labeled as things like promiscuous, that they're seeking something out, when rarely is that the case. So that right there, I think, is what separates me, and why I feel it's important for me to get across that I am a trans guy, and that I do have a different perspective, because there are certain things that are really different.
You might have wanted, with all of your being, to be with the bros. But they still took advantage of you, and there was an unequal power dynamic there that played out that you could not have had control over.
Right. Yeah.
It sounds like you didn't have the resources, it sounds like you didn't have the support, and you also did not have an internal belief or confidence, because you're playing a character.
Yeah.
And then everybody else around you is pushing you in this box, so they don't even have to question who you are anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did you find yourself?
It took so much out of me, having to deal with the repercussions of this pattern that would keep happening over and over and over and over again. And I was really angry about feeling so chronically misunderstood. I'm 21 now. I started transitioning when I turned 19, officially, with testosterone injections. When I graduated in 2022, I then got a full-time job. It was during that time, when the pattern kept happening over and over and over again, that I realized this is not sustainable. I will be dead if I don't do this. Do this meaning actually take control over my life
And your body.
And my body. Yeah.
What did that look like for you then, to say, this is going to happen now? I'm going to take control, what does that mean for you to take control of your body?
To stop caring about what other people think. That was the number one. That was such, wow, a mountain to climb over. I fell many times trying to climb that mountain. But I knew though, especially when I started doing research on testosterone and, well, how well it can work, I started seeing glimpses of the other side, and then I just had to do it. I remember I cut my hair right before I started testosterone. It was like I was transported back to 5th grade. All the stuff that I had stopped healing from in 5th grade when I started growing
Sure.
my hair out, it was like I was transported back to there. My healing process continued. That was fascinating. And I use the word fascinating meaning so many things because it was beautiful, it was enlightening, and it was also heartbreaking and so painful too. I do remember a moment where right after I cut my hair, where I did go back into the archives and I was looking at old writings. There were songs that I had written purely about death when I was like, 4th, 5th grade, talking about my funeral. Seeing that again for the first time, that really made all the difference in the way that I could see it all come together now. Any fleeting thoughts of doubt or starting to get anxious about even the thought of what other people might say, then those words that I wrote back in 5th grade, those would come to mind and it would just completely throw all that out the window. It was really like I had to battle it out with the people pleaser in me. And I did.
And you won.
And I won. Yeah. And I mean, of course, I'm not cured of being a people pleaser. I'm always gonna have thoughts about how other people perceive me. I am far enough away from it now that I can actually live my life. And going through the process of transitioning to, oh my gosh, I think it is so important to highlight how and why the process of medically transitioning, going from one extreme to the other, and I'm using that as an example because that's what I know.
Sure.
But it's not limited just to that. But medically transitioning though, going from a long red-haired girl in society to who I am now, it really is a sociological study to literally feel within your body how people react to your presence in a matter of months. Like I started transitioning February 2023. A couple months later, everybody was calling me buddy. It was like, my gosh, I'm a teenage boy now.
Were you like, wait, me?
Yeah. Because it went from ma'am to buddy. And then now it's sir. It took about, I think, till month 6 or 7 on testosterone to get to sir. and not as many occurrences of buddy. Yeah, gosh, it was wild. It was really quite wild. And it is to this day. It still catches me off guard at times.
What was it like for you to look in the mirror and then this reflection that you see outwardly is reflecting how you have, consciously or not, always seen yourself?
Big moment for me was top surgery. I mean, the whole thing in general. What an incredible experience, and how privileged and fortunate I feel to be living in Massachusetts and have that covered by insurance. When I was feeling more or less recovered, getting ready to return back to work after I was on medical leave, I do remember looking in the mirror, without a shirt after I got out of the shower, and my scars were finally healing, things were looking pretty good. And I just started sobbing. And I remember I ran to my journal and I brought it back to the bathroom. And I was sitting on my bathroom floor. I was sobbing and writing.
Happy tears this time.
Such happy tears. Yeah. Because even before then, the testosterone, oh my gosh, I mean, it worked like magic. Like, even a few months in, I would look in the mirror and be like, hey, what's up?
So you got this little thing going on right here.
And this little thing too, yeah, exactly. But it wasn't, for me, it wasn't until I got top surgery too, because my chest, from when I was really young, it was always such a dysphoric place
Sure.
for me. To finally feel like I had rid myself of trauma, really, it was incredible. After a while on testosterone, after a few months, things were really coming together, and I didn't mind my chest as much, but it really was like the final step. It was so freeing in that I didn't have to put so much focus on covering myself up anymore, or even just like thinking about it. Yeah, I think it was then. So that was about 6 months after I started testosterone. It was October of 2023.
It occurred to me when you were talking about struggles of going in the locker rooms, in the bathrooms, in 5th grade.
Yeah.
Sadly, these are conversations that we're still having.
Yeah.
For some reason, we as a country are obsessed with the bathrooms.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. We all just need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But does it feel like an attack on you as somebody who just needs to pee, frankly? How does this current political environment affect you, or does it?
It certainly does. Again, couple sides to this, because on one hand, I feel I have this privilege as a trans man, for one, but a passing trans man.
And a passing white
Yes.
trans man, by the way.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. The difference that needs to be talked about more between white trans men versus black trans men, Asian trans men, it's astronomical how many differences there are. And people, typically white people, there is not
White cisgendered people, white
Yeah.
individuals who are born in the gender in which they feel matches who they are.
Yeah, there's limited understanding of what things could be like if any of those things were different, if they weren't white, if they weren't cis, if they weren't straight. And intersectionality is such a crucial topic that I really feel needs to be taught more in schools for everybody. Kids starting at a much younger age than they're bringing it up now. I literally got tears in my eyes reading my sociology textbook this year, because for the first time I read about all this stuff in a class. In high school, in middle school, in elementary school. Did anybody ever talk about that? No. Not even once.
Well, and trans women of color are statistically at more risk of sexual assault,
Oh yes.
of homicide,
Yeah.
of physical assault. So the attacks on the transgender community, trans men and trans women, are not covered, I personally believe, in the way that they should be. If they are covered, then they might be misgendered.
Yeah.
So there are ways that continue to re-traumatize the community, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely. To be frank, too, it appears to me that a lot of my fellow trans men, white trans men in particular, not all, there's a lot of really, really activist type ones out there. A lot are also really comfortable in their newfound privilege that they have now. That too is another reason why I want it like I want to tell everybody, because the difference in privilege and power, even in the trans community itself, between trans men, between trans women, between white trans people, between trans people of color, there are so many things to account for that I, as a white person, will never have to deal with in my entire life. There are certain struggles that set me apart from white cis men, but on the day-to-day basis, when I'm just out and about and I don't have to reveal that I'm trans, I'm just another white guy. And there are a lot of trans women in particular who don't feel that they have that privilege. Exactly what you said. Experience violence, experience hateful comments, everything, pretty much on the daily. As soon as I started passing, that was not an issue for me. I will point out there was maybe about a 2-month gap in where I went from presenting to society as a female versus male, where people weren't really sure what to make of me. I even got asked, "What are you?" a couple times, which
Lovely.
Right? It was during that time when people didn't know, didn't understand, maybe were afraid of what they didn't know and didn't understand, where I think I did get the most hate during that time when I was just out and about. I think that's important to talk about too. I was the same person the entire time, and I went from being perceived as this attractive young woman where I would get catcalled, experienced a lot of things, to then being perceived as somebody that was in the middle, where people were just, they could be really vicious about that. And then now, like, well, okay, I've made it to what sort of feels like safety until people find out that I'm trans in certain spaces. But there's no way that I can forget all of that.
I have to interrupt, I'm sorry, because you could. You could choose to say, you know what, I've been through this. And thank you so much, life, for giving me all those fun times. But I'm just going to sit back and live my life now as a privileged white dude and let everybody else fight those battles.
Oh, but I can't do that. I can't. I could, but I can't.
What can we as a society do? I'm not asking you to speak for the entire trans community, but what can we do to help? How can we help you and others that we may know just simply feel safe? What can we do? How can we change?
With others that people might know in particular, under the LGBTQ plus community in general, specifically trans people, but everybody under the umbrella, to let them know that it's a safe space when you're with them, for one. Gosh, that can really change things. Even with me sometimes, I won't fully let loose in certain spaces until I know that trans people are accepted there. I think too, talking about it in general, very general terms, talking about it is so important. Of course, making sure that everybody's safe, that is talking about it. I think though, there's a lot of hesitancy. I've seen a lot of hesitancy. Even when people are accepting, they're unsure how to approach the subject or bring it up. I completely understand that. I think though, talking about it takes precedence over any feeling of hesitation and saying it wrong. Yeah, I mean, you might say it wrong. You might phrase it at first in a way that you didn't necessarily intend. That stride is just so crucial. And there are resources out there helpful to parents, to teachers, to anybody about these things. If we want to take it a step further than that too, not only talk about it, but be the one to begin that conversation, be the spreader of that information, sort of like you. And that is just such an incredibly beautiful thing. Not many people take the time to do so. It takes a lot of courage, and it takes a certain It takes a certain amount of care, courageous intent, compassion to do that. And time. Even when it's not being talked about it, we might be thinking about it. So all of that being said, that it takes energy, effort, and time, it's all for such a good result. Without people like that, without energy being put towards that, nothing is ever gonna change.
And it can save lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially on the note of suicidal ideations and even just the feeling of this is too much and I want to give up. It's tough because I want to say to all the trans people out there, but particularly the younger ones, you will make it. It will get better, even if it doesn't feel like it right now. It's tough though. I'm sitting here in Massachusetts, protected by sanctuary laws. I have access to hormones for the time being, at least. I'm really fortunate to have that. And so in certain cases, what I just said, that it will get better, in certain cases, maybe for kids in different states, even different countries, the situation could be a lot different. And though the path to get to freedom might look different, I think it will happen, but it requires the effort of a lot of people doing work like this and sharing and talking and starting the conversation. And then I think that we can make it.
I am incredibly grateful for your courage. It may not seem courageous to talk to somebody, but you're talking about trauma upon trauma upon trauma. You're sharing moments in your life that, yeah, you've healed from, but they helped create the lens in which you're viewing the world, and you could choose to view this world as this horrible place, and you could choose to be bitter. And it is an active choice, I believe, on your part to have this light. And if you would have ended your life, that light would not be here. And I just want to thank you, because we're all better for you being here.
Thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate that. More than just suicidal ideation, as somebody that has actually been in the hospital twice, the first time for suicidal ideation, the second because I actually did try. I really appreciate what you said. When people take it seriously, in general, yeah, it is really serious stuff. Not every trans person will attempt suicide, but enough have that it has become a societal issue. If, when, and now that access is being taken away to gender-affirming care, to support in general, we are seeing an increase in suicide rates, and particularly among trans youth and queer youth in general. It's just the fact that it's due to collective decisions of higher ups in the government. That's why we need to talk about it. It's heavy stuff, but I'm always going to be willing to talk about it, because there's so much more to the trans experience and queer experience in general, that, in the little things, the little things that build up over time, like me peeing myself on the way home, and all of the patterns of me being sexually abused over and over and over again. All these little things that are really big things, but the little things that people might not expect from the outside, or not ever guess that could happen. The consequences that would never be predicted unless otherwise stated. I am trans, and I have always been trans. I have experienced sexual abuse. Some are very quick to say you are trans because you were sexually abused. And there are so many different reasons for people to transition. You know, my story is only my story, so I can only speak on that. In my story, I have always been trans, and there were so many signs from when I was 2, 3, 4, 5. Signs that now my parents both say, wow, I can't believe I didn't respond to that. And not even, I can't believe I missed that, but I can't believe I didn't respond to that. That, in the home, in society, the lack of response in general, from all areas, because I don't blame my parents at all. There was a lack of education, there was a lack of resources, all of those things. It's not their fault. But the lack of response in general, that is what perpetuated everything else.
Well, thank you very, very much for sharing your story. I actually met Lou's dad before I met Lou. And I'll never forget it. He said to me, my son is my greatest teacher. I saw him about a month ago and I reminded him of that, and he actually teared up. He said, it's still true. Obviously, you can see why. The joy that Lou has, really, in my opinion, I'm not sure a lot of people would have it given the experiences that he's had. But his ability to show up, to tell his story, and to remember those experiences in a way that, frankly, can save lives is an important thing for me and hopefully all of us to take into consideration. Because it's amazing what differences we can make if we listen, if we create a safe space, and if we simply say, I care. We all should do a little more of that. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share my channel. And who do you think that we should meet next?